And you're like, oh, I'm going to go get them Jordans. I'm going to go do this and that.
And here's the thing, too. They give you a $300,000 student loan.
Well, don't even talk about
They
That's
give
a whole
you
nother
$300,000 student loan. And no disrespect to either one, you know, because they're working really hard.
Just realize you are the Supreme Court Justice in your court.
How's it going, guys? My name is Tomas.
I'm Mark.
This is a podcast that each expert, him and I, and some guests express their POV at a time so that you could use it for your reference in your life. Now, before we get into, you know, all the knit and grit and the meat and the bones and the potatoes and everything that people say, I would like to first start with how we met. So, Mark, do you want to take over?
So, obviously, Tomas and I, we are connoisseurs of cigars, and we're at a cigar lounge. And what's funny was, you know, I'm one to strike up conversation just based on simple stuff. So Tomas was sitting off to the side with a hat on, and I referenced the hat. So it's basically a golf hat. There's a golf company called Lucky. It's, you know, it's plaid and had the clover on it. So I said, hey, man, you play golf? And he goes, no. I said, it's a cool hat. And then we just started having conversation. He jumped over from where he was sitting to where I was sitting, and the conversation happened, and then here we are now. So the conversation was very, very strong. And it's one of those things that, you know, I've been my whole life. I've had the gift of gab and conversation with everybody. And it's just the thing that we need to understand, that if you don't have conversations with people, you're going to have a hard time on this planet, because that's all you have around you are people. So I hope that answered your question. But
Yeah, it did. And then, so what you guys are seeing is a brief moment of our conversation that we're actually filming. There is a ton of discussion, and, you know, we meet several times a week. We discuss multiple topics, to, you know, business ventures, to everything. His wife, my lady, they get along together. So we got a good thing going on. But the one thing in common that we have is a high curiosity in communication and business. And that's a part of thing that I always talk to younger or older people when they don't know what they want to do in life. I always say you should learn business, sales in particular. Learn sales and communication if you want to excel in life. Communication is going to help you. The one thing that I particularly really focused on talking with Mark in the beginning was I didn't want to disrespect him, his time, and his attention that he was given to me in the cigar lounge. I wanted to move to his space and shake his hand and actually start a conversation, because there are not many people that actually like to talk. And it was very pleasant and nice to have a person that said, you know, hey, how's your day going? And nice hat. And then, you know, from there, it just grew organically. So I would say to anybody else that's watching this podcast, if you want to spark a conversation, make sure you just give them the right energy, the attention, and the time for that brief moment, and go shake their hands. You know, if you're across the table, just say, hey, may I move to your section? And then shake your hand. Hi, my name is Tomas. You know, do that. I know we're just, you know, diving in, but like I said in the beginning, we've been having these conversations over and over and over again. So I just like to just, you know, take the bull by the horns and then just jump in. And I think because Mark will say that too, but because I took the time and dove into that, the relationship grew. So, you know, that's important, right?
yeah, I think something you said that's extremely important, I mean, is going out of your way. I think we're too comfortable in our own skin and realizing that we get mad because people aren't the same as we are. Well, you won't know until you have a conversation with them. And then you don't know if that person is put in your life in order to take you out of your comfort zone, because nothing happens in your comfort zone. And we want everything comfortable. We want everything, you know, a certain way, and don't realize that, you know, even in the EKG, it's up and down. What happens when you flatline?
Mm-hmm.
You're dead. So if there's no nothing to generate any energy, then you're lifeless. So the thing is that you want to continuously step your game up. And if it's things that you don't know, and this is the conversations we've had as far as what we're doing on this podcast, is to stimulate growth, which we, don't tend to see. And so the conversations that we've had have been conversations we should have had the generations before. This is the conversation that we really were concerned about, is because we don't really see it. I mean, yes, we see different podcasts and things that they're talking about. It's like, well, there's still things that I wish I had an opportunity to say about. But now we have a format where we can have that conversation. So does that make sense?
Yes,
Okay.
that makes sense. So there's a lot of things that I could feed off of what Mark said right now, but in particular, just to aid so that a 5-year-old could understand what he is saying to, people that are older than us could utilize it in their life. Life is not just good parts. The sun goes up, the sun goes down. You get light and then you get darkness. But if without the two, there's no balance. Make sure when you're in a tight zone in your life, don't just focus on the negative, because it tends to suck you in. But, shine the light on a spot where you could, shine the light in your life. That'll really help.
Yeah, well, and it's funny, you just said something that was, stop looking at the negative. Well, the problem is that we've been taught in school that negative is failure, and we don't understand that failure is not the end all. It is just a lesson learned. It's what you learn from that point and then move forward. You're told from the teachers, that you're stupid, or they put you off to the back, and or you don't exist. So you feel that if you're not up to par, the person who's sitting in the front of the class. I always tell my kids all the time, it's like, you want to sit in the front of the class. Why? I said, well, the person who's sitting in the front asking all the questions, getting all the answers. But you want to be cool in the back. Want to know why you flunking. So, those kind of things. And it's like and that's the thing that we don't realize, is that, everybody's like, well, the nerd. Well, you don't want to be a nerd. Yeah, well, if you're the cool guy ends up working for the nerd. The nerd signs the check. And the person who signs the check makes the most money. But we don't want to have, that's another conversation down the road. But, those kind of things, and the negativity, back to that point, is you have to realize that, like I said, with the EKG, there's the negatives and the positives. The problem is how can you get through the negative? Do you have enough positive in your life? Do you have enough positive people in your circle to strengthen you to move past that? Well, the problem was we catch ourselves being lonely, and that's when, the enemy does his best work, is he tries to isolate you. So all he does is feed you that same old stuff over and over. So you have to put yourself in a position, like you said, you have to shine yourself to the light. You don't realize that darkness can't overcome the light. I don't care if it's a room of darkness and little bit, you have a match, the room illuminates. There's more darkness, but it doesn't dominate the light. So you have to realize that light is what is more powerful. So as you get more matches, guess what? The darkness disappears. So it's not like darkness is the absence of light. As soon as light comes in the room, it can't stop it. So the more light, it disappears. It can't do the other way around. So those are the kind of things that we need to pay attention to in our life, is that what kind of, environment you're putting yourself in, and what are you feeding your brain? And if you're not doing anything positive, then you have issues that ultimately we see the results on the news, we see it on Instagram, all these things that are happening bad things that are happening to people, and not realizing that you have a way out and you're not alone. And this is something we want to discuss on this show, is that you're not alone. You may be sitting in your room and you're going, dang, there ain't nobody listening to what I'm saying or whatever. And it's like, oh, my voice is not being heard. Well, here's an opportunity to have those conversations, because whether we believe it or not, we are more alike than we are different. And the only thing that we allow to shows the difference is race, creed, gender. But outside of that, we're human. We all feel the same emotions. But the problem is we don't know how to address the emotions because we don't have those conversations. And that's what we're doing on this show, is to really talk about the things that weren't talked about in the past from our generations. I know they existed because they're human. But how do we change that? And the narrative now is, because I have 3 kids and I have nephews and nieces, and it's important for me to share what I have to them so they don't have to struggle the way I struggle. And I'm sure that somebody who's watching could possibly, like I said, understand it and get it too. Like, oh, me too.
And That's why we have this podcast. This podcast is so that unexpert in life could share their POV so that you could use it for your reference. So just what you hear, utilize it, or if not, you still have it in your archive.
To your point, as far as an expert in their reference, just realize you are the Supreme Court justice in your court.
That part. That part. Okay. With that being said, there's so many things that I wanted to talk about from what you just said right now. you and I just go off of each other and then we just go into a million directions. But I want to keep those conversations for another clinician or a special guest, or and so that we could have more in-depth conversation based on one topic. So going back to our beginning, when you and I were talking, you say you taught STEM programs, and you're heavily involved in youth development. Why is that?
It goes back to I'm the oldest grandchild, so I hated kids. So it was like 7 years I was by myself. I was the only nephew. I was the only grandchild. A little selfish. Then my cousin came, and which was not bad because he wasn't in my house. But then 2 years later, my brother came. And so it was interesting having 9 years of not sharing any. My mother was just her and I. And so it was very interesting when someone else comes in life. She got married, so I never had a father. And she said, "This is your father, do what he says." Well, for 9 years, I never had one, so I don't know what that means. And if that's as far as our conversation went, I'm like, I don't know where to go with it. So I did exactly what she said. But what's interesting is as I got older and they grew up, I had more cousins. I just didn't like them because they took my world. I mean, I was by myself. But then I got put in a position where I worked in an ice rink, and I had no choice. There were kids from the time I got there to the time I left. And so I was around them. And then basically what God was doing to me was molding me into the person that he wanted me to be. And then the audience that he wanted me to be with, I had no choice. So
when you say the ice rink, if you started earlier, then you would have been a professional hockey player.
Yeah,
you were that good.
I had that opportunity. Yeah. I had played with, back to the rink. I mean, it took me like 6 months to even touch the ice. I was like, I don't see nobody like us out there. I'm not going out there. My buddy kept pushing, come on. So I started skating. It was like, okay. But as soon as they gave me the stick and the puck, it was like crack. I couldn't get enough. It was not, I had to have it every day, and I was on the ice every day. So it went from not at all to way too much. So at that time, there was a famous producer who brought his team in and skated, and they skated with some ex-pro players. And so we were skating, we were having conversation, and they're like, "Oh, so hey, where you going to camp? This, that, and the other." And I'm like, "I'm too old." And they're like, "No, you're not." I'm like, "Yes, I am." And they're like, "Well, why you say that?" I said, "I'm 25." And they're like, "Oh, yeah, you are." I'm like, "Hello, I understand." But what's interesting about the game, though, is that I wish I would have learned it earlier because of the attitude that I had going in. So, like, I could have a bad day, could be totally pissed off, play a game, and by the time I'm done, I don't even know what I was mad about. And I think that's something that, youngsters need to understand, that they need to have an outlet that allows them to get taken away from whatever their issues are. And instead of sitting there listening over and over and over, somebody telling you, come out of it, come out of it, come out of it. It's like, well, they have no other release because they don't know how. But if you have something that totally engulfs you and takes it away from you, then it's organic. It's not like it's being forced upon you. It's something that happens. But so, I worked at the ice rink, and like I said, I was exposed to kids all day. And then I started teaching, and then it became interesting because I was actually taking kids from where they were. We had conversation before, I come from a generation of kids seen, not heard. And the problem is that nowadays, kids are like, okay, you don't want to hear me? I'll show you. And now you can't get rid of it. It's in digital library forever. You can never erase it. But, you don't realize now you've got people going, well, I did that 20 years ago or 10 years ago. Well, it's on film. And now you can't get rid of it. Now it's stopping you from becoming a professional or whatever, but because you don't realize that, something as simple as you were upset at one moment can totally change your life.
So can you break it down when you say you're seen, not heard? Because I understand it in one way, but I want to fully understand what you mean by you're seen or you were seen and not heard.
Okay, so before I answer that question, tell me what you see as seen and not heard.
Because I'm much younger, right?
Okay.
The exposure and everything from the phones and everything.
Okay. Okay.
You're seen, but
Gotcha.
you're really not heard as in like a person, because you see, but you're not heard what is going on with you internally. And that was my perspective, but I would like to understand it with the guests that are watching of what you mean by you're seen and not heard, and why you want to tackle that issue.
Okay. So for me, when I was younger, I'm not, anyway, younger.
You're still young.
Yeah, exactly. In spirit, trust me. It's all about that. But anyway, I would go to functions, family functions or whatever. And it's like, yeah, you're seen, but you go get in that room. You go to the bathroom now, you get whatever you're going to do, eat, whatever. And I don't want to see you disappear, and not realizing that disconnect of the fact that I don't have any interaction with these adults. And to be truthfully honest, I'm the oldest one. So it's just me by myself. So I got to go to this room by myself, and you all are interacting and I'm by myself. So it's like, what does that mean? So, and then how do you interact? Because if I don't see you in interaction with people, then I don't know what that looks like. So when I start to be in a position where I'm having conversation with people, I don't know how to act because I've never seen it done live. So it's those are the things also, as well as being a parent, is that it's important to be in your child's life, because if you're not spending time with them, because here's the thing, things are caught, not taught. You can sit here all day and dictate something and talk to someone, but it's not what you say, it's what you do. And so the things that are caught is the way your lifestyle is. And so, you can sit there and say when a non-colored person says, a racial slur. Well, it wasn't necessarily taught. It's just the way that their parents live. And so it's the environment they're in. It's not, and it's a prime example I'll give you. I was 8 years old, and my mother and family, we went to Universal Studios. And so I got the opportunity, being the child that was screaming and hollering, pick me, pick me, pick me, to be one of their exhibits, to say less. So it was me sitting on a motorcycle, and it was the green screen behind me, and it shows you whatever. And so, I'm on it, I'm going whatever. And the guy says, okay, that car cut you off, raise your fist. And I threw the finger up. I'm 8 years old. I don't drive. Where did I get it from? My mother literally shut me down, like, get away from me. Go sit over there, like the whole day, because I embarrassed her. But the problem is that I don't drive.
So how do you know?
How do I know? So those are the kinds of things that we don't realize, that how effective we are as parents to our children. And even not even just children, it's just people in general that you're involved with. And so it's important in relationships, you're talking about conversations and how we gelled in our meeting, is because the vibration was right. And just as much as you want to get from me, I want to get from you, because I want to be a lifelong student. Because I learn from kids all day. I love talking to kids because they're so raw. There's no expectation. If you meet someone, now it's prime example, us. If you meet an adult, you have to put a front up to a certain amount until they give you the vibe that you can bring it down. Otherwise, your expectations, what you do, the way you carry yourself has to be at an extreme level until you figure, I can bring it down where I can be who I am. But why are you putting a front up in the first place? Those are the parts that we don't really pay attention to. And then the scarier part of it is then, as a parent, up to current, we want to blame it on the school. But yeah, they spend 8 hours a day with you at school, but what about those other 16 hours?
Man, I'm telling you, we could dive into a lot more topics. We could dive into a lot more. But let me just touch up on what you said. You said, I want to make sure I want to give to you, but I want to make sure that you can give me something too. So what I would say is, instead of looking for something in a relationship, make sure you are the proactive one in giving, but make sure that you're not screwed on picking a person that can't reciprocate it. So if it's not reciprocating, you're not participating.
Can I add a point to that?
Yes, of course.
So it's funny, sometimes I come up with analogies. So you have to realize that what you just described was a two-way street.
Yep.
And the problem is that everybody's looking at the one-way street because we're selfish beings and not realizing that the one-way street only goes which way? One way. When if you look at a street that goes both, now you have the opportunity to turn around and go back. You know, otherwise you're gonna have to make lefts to get back to where you started instead of being able to just make a U-turn. So, you know, back to your analogy with the cup, is that we don't realize in the Bible verse it says that, you know, my cup runneth over. What we don't realize is the cup is ours. And anything that's in the cup is yours.
I love that.
But if there's anything that flows over, it's not for you. But why are we trying to put it back in the cup? Well, the problem is your cup doesn't hold it. And the problem is that because we're so selfish and we want what we have, we don't realize if you pour the cup out, now you have more room for it to be filled back up.
And that's a good business strategy and a mindset as well, because choose to be honest, you want to be broke on paper, but you try to hold on every aspect, money, dime that comes into your life.
You know why?
Yeah, I know. And that's exactly the point. But look, there was a soccer player recently that was one of the highest paid soccer players in the European League. So there were two. One was a football player, one was a soccer player, right? The football player put everything in his what's it called? Trust's name, and then the soccer player put everything in his mother's name. Both wives sued them for their assets. They had nothing on paper.
Right.
So the wife got nothing. Exactly. I'm not saying that the wives don't deserve shit.
Right, but
you know, but
so you're pointing the broke part on paper, which is important to a concept because it's much larger than just a simple saying being broke on paper. You asked me a question about what is professional brokeaholic.
Yes.
And so
that's a word that you say a lot. I wanted you to, break it down. So you said that you were a professional brokeaholic and that changed you and that turned you on what the business that you're running in the financial side. What do you mean by your professional brokeaholic and how did it change your life, affect your life and others?
Well, you know the difference between poor and broke. Poor is a mindset. It's the way you live. Broke just means you don't have any money. Professional brokeaholic, I say I am because, and I'm a recovering brokeaholic because of the way I've been taught how money is my whole life.
Okay.
So based on my parents, my grandparents, you have a view of money based on what you've seen. And all these things are learned behaviors because of the environment that you're in. It's not so much, and as you get older, and the reason why you said, as I grow older, because I'm learning the value of money. The problem is most of us, you can ask a 5-year-old who's on the $20 bill. You can ask them who's on the quarter. You can ask them who's on the dime. They all have an answer. But ask a high school student to graduate from high school and tell them to balance a checkbook. Or ask them what credit is, or ask them what real estate's about, or what is investing, which are the things that you need to know outside of high school. Because what happens is now you're a newborn, you're 18 years old, you're grown, but you're a newborn, and you step into the real world. And so now you have no idea, because based on what you were taught, you have no idea what's happening because your family didn't talk to you about money. And then if they did talk about it, it was a taboo conversation because we didn't have enough to pay the bills and you can't eat today or all these things. And then you don't realize as a child, it's reflecting you, but it has nothing to do with you. You don't understand the effect. And then because those mindsets had already been put in you all these years, so you have no idea what money's about. And so you don't know what it's like. So when you step on college campus and they give you the credit card and you don't even have a job, but they give you a credit card. And you're like, oh, I'm going to go get them Jordans. I'm going to go do this and that.
And here's the thing, too. They give you a $300,000 student loan.
Well, don't even talk about it.
They
That's
give
a
you
whole
a
nother
$300,000 student loan
well,
to go to school so that you could be in debt from day two, because when you become, 17,
After
18,
you sign.
Yeah. And then day two, you're done.
No,
so,
well,
but
the
yeah.
scarier part is even though that the loan that you're discussing, the $300,000 loan, the only time it's been forgiven is during Obama. That loan, if you die, they will find the closest relative and it goes to them.
My father told me before, when I was a kid, I said, I want a Porsche Carrera 911. I said, I want an Escalade for my family. And then I want, another, like a Sprinter van or something. This is me being a kid. And I told that to my father. And he said, you can't fucking do that. You won't do that. And I told myself, don't let this dictate where you're going to go. And I understand that oftentimes in life, we just, you hear things from adults and sometimes they're encouraging, sometimes they're not. It might not be personal because they're just having a day, So don't take it like that. But obviously the environment does dictate where you are, but don't let your environment that you could create for yourself dictate where you're going to go.
So can I ask you,
Yes,
what was the thing that was inside you that triggered that attitude at that age?
I didn't want nobody to dictate where I was going to go in life. And I just been like that, I didn't know, but just like life, if you don't have a coordinate where you want to go, like a GPS on your phone, life is not going to show a path. Mm-hmm. And when I was a kid, I used to focus on people they were talking like that. And, at 13 years old, I read, what's it called? Napoleon Hill's Law of Attraction.
Mm-hmm.
And that changed my life.
Great
book. But prior to that, I already had that mindset where I wanted to be something. I wanted to do something in life. And the only person that was going to do it was me, because I saw my father doing what he was doing and he wasn't nowhere near it. And no disrespect to him, because he was, he was working hard and everything. But what I could do in life and what he could do in life were two different things, because I've seen it. And I learned from him how not to be. Mm-hmm. And that was my thing. I learned from my father on how not to be. So I took that negative and I was the one that could turn it into positive. My mom, brilliant woman, working really hard and super smart too. And I saw her steady changing things in her life so that she could make incremental adjustments so that it could turn positive. Mm-hmm. So I knew I could do it. And I really paid attention to those small things. And then also basketball really helped me, because I went from nothing to getting accepted into high school because of how I play.
There are two things you said in that story that are extremely important. You said something about life's not going to give you a direction in the GPS.
Yes.
The problem is nobody has a destination. So if you grab your phone and you hit an address, there's your destination.
Yes.
So and to ask you from my location or from somewhere else, the problem is nobody has a destination. Mm-hmm. So you're not going to achieve a destination if you don't have one.
No, you won't.
Second point you said was in regards to your father, is because how he was raised and the things that he was exposed to allowed him only to do what he could do. And there's something that as a child growing up, you don't understand until you become an adult, realizing that adults only can do what they that adults can only do what they do based on what they have, mm-hmm. what's available to them. And I had to do the same thing with my father as well as my stepfather. Because, you're angry as a child because these are the people that are supposed to be pouring in your life. Well, see, I was one whose father did not want him. So my mother was 17, my father was 17. My father was given a choice. His mother told him, if you accept this child, we won't send you to school. My mother said, you got to do what you got to do, and she did what she had to do. Well, so you're telling me that, one, I'm worthless. Your education is more important than me. But not understanding that he was 17 years old. I didn't get that till I was older. But, you know, you figure, well, I'm unwanted. See, I'm not, and then the things that the enemy decides that he wants to feed you on top of that, and not really looking at the big picture. Mm-hmm. So with my stepfather, like I said, I keep his name because, you know, when I got married, I was going to go back to my birth name, but I had been Demoika my whole life, or the life that I could remember, 9 through, you know, the time I got married. And I thought about it, I was like, well, I've established this name. This is who I am. Mm-hmm. Well, the difference now, if I go back, now I disconnect from my mother and my brother. So now there's a sense of disconnection, and then give them the feeling that they're not wanted. And so I wanted to go back to something. So it was like, okay, so growing up, I was marked Demoika, but I changed it because it's spelled Demoika, and I like the flair of Demoika. Mm-hmm. It has a nice, you know, because I was tired of mocha almond fudge and all the other mochas. I got tired of that. So now it's like, now I have an opportunity to change the name. It's like, yes, you that was your name. You're no longer here. I have the banner. Let me take it. And so those are the important part. Those are the things that you learn in life. And this is conversations we're going to have on this show, is because these are things that we need to discuss. And so, you know, generation curses or blessings are extremely important. And I know in these conversations that we have, and not hopefully, you will continue to watch and you will definitely get more of it. But these conversations need to be had because for generations, we've had these secrets that no one's talking about. And so it's important for the next generation, because I have 3 kids and I have these conversations with my kids constantly. And because I didn't get them. And so I wanted to make sure my kids got what I didn't get. You said something about your dad was, you didn't want to be like that. And so, and the drive in you was like, I'm not going to do that. So for me, it's because I didn't get the things that I thought I wanted. So like my kids, I love on my kids. I've always loved on them. I've been their biggest cheerleader. I've been their support the whole time. Well, my oldest son does not like physical touch. So I would give him kisses and he'd be like, yo, Dad, stop. I was like, whoa. But because I didn't get it, I would give it to him. And he's like, I can't do that. So then when my second son came, he was instantly no problem because that's the language he speaks. And my daughter, that's a whole different ballgame. I mean, you know, and those, we can have that conversation later, is because mothers and sons have a bond that fathers and daughters have, and we don't understand. And then when you're looking from the other side, you know, especially if you're a man raising men, you have to realize that's the first woman in their life. That's the first love. And you, as father, cannot separate that bond. Well, first of all, she had him inside for 9 months. And now, you know, that touch goes even deeper than that. So it's like, and I can't ever get in that space.
It's beautiful because for a mother, a son is the last love. And for the son, the mother is the first love. And
well put.
Yeah, it's just beautiful.
I'm sorry, I hope I didn't take you off
No,
topic.
hey, say what you got to say, because I want to hear your POV, because you are an expert that I love listening to. And that's why we're having this podcast. The other thing that I learned from my experts that were in my life, that influenced me with their advice, with their reference point. So let me put it like this. There were 2 kids. There are 2 kids from the same family. One thought, changed his mindset, became something. One did the same thing and didn't really look past 2-3 days after, you know, right now. Long story short, 20 years later, one runs New York Times with photos. The other one runs his, you know, English studio and, you know, whatnot, but kind of struggling. And no disrespect to either one, you know, because they're working really hard. But where you go is where you vision yourself and you work towards it. And you can't just think about 2-3 days later, because that's not going to change life. You know, you got to think months. What's your 3-month plan? What's your 1-year plan? You know, what's your 5-year, 7-year, and 10-year plan? Do you have those things? Have you ever thought about those things? You know, you have to. And like I said, going back to the, you know, your life is like a GPS. Without a place that you want to go, a path won't show. So make sure you know where you want to go, because the path won't show.
True.
And that's one thing that I would like to say. The one thing that changed me was they were poor Puerto Ricans, black Puerto Ricans. And my grandmother used to say, hey, go and get some milk. My uncle said, okay. And then he said, your father used to scour around and then, try to make money so that he could buy the milk. Mm-hmm. A week later, mom still comes over, says, where's the milk? Go get some milk for the house. But every day, though, because they need milk every day. Mm-hmm. My uncle thought, he was like, okay, if I do X, Y, and Z and create a system so that I could make some money, I could go buy a cow and leave it at the house so that we could get milk every day. We got grass. But my father was the one that made sure that he scoured and got the cents and the pennies and whatever so that he could go get the milk. Mm-hmm. That's the entrepreneurial difference in their life. And no disrespect to nobody. And if you're watching this, I don't want you to take it as a disrespect. I learned. And because there was not like a positivity that could rain down on me, I had to be the positivity that could change stuff. Mm-hmm. And that's what drove me hardcore towards what I'm doing. And I hope, to other people that I work with, I am the positivity that, comes into their life that could, change at least with the way I am, who I am, and what I do that affects you in a positive way.
That's powerful. You said something key. My team mantra is NWA,
okay,
which means nobody wins alone. And the thing about it is whether you want to believe it or not, we need people. Mm-hmm. And, if you think about it, if God dropped whatever you're asking for out of the sky, you would totally freak out because you don't know how to respond to that. So what God does is he blesses you through people because that's what you know. And we don't realize that how important a team is. And so my son, who runs track in college, and for him, we've been explaining to him is on this journey, you need a team. Those things happen. If you look at anybody, even if you're playing an individual sport, if you're playing golf, if you're playing tennis, if you swim, if you fence, you have coaches, you have teams, you have trainers. All these things are the people that you need to move forward. The problem is if you're a selfish person and believing that it's all about you, you're never going to flourish because that's all you think about is you. And so you don't realize how you affect everybody. So if you even go back to the fact if you drop a rock in the water and it ripples, that single thing that happened is that one thing, but how many people does it affect? And you don't realize that in everything you do, you affect the people around you. My wife always tells me, I'm connected to you. So whatever you do, affects me, which affects the kids. And I'm coming out of selfishness because I'm an extremely selfish person. Sometimes I don't exhibit it, but I'm an extremely selfish person because of being, by myself for so long. And those things that you are ingrained in your spirit is you don't realize until you're older, well, dang, I should have took care of this, and this 20 years ago. But you don't realize those things still have a hold on you. But I'm saying that point as far as team, and your woman is the most important thing. Because that is your partner. And, I've been blessed with this woman. We're coming up on 30 married in August, and we've been together 35 years. And I've been married longer than, I believe, my grandmother 5 times.
Oh, wow.
With the same person. No disrespect to my grandmother. Things happen, but whatever. But I realize how important that truly is. If you look at today, if you make it 5 years, people, you had a great run. 10 years, you had a great run. I'm 3 decades. And the growth that I've had, thanks to her, like you said, she puts you on point and keeps you, and they are good for putting the things that doggone well you should, and yet you still don't do it. And you get and the frustration, I'm speaking to you women who are watching. The frustration is not at you. It comes out at you, but it's the frustration with ourselves. We are more upset with ourselves because, damn, again?
I'm going to be honest. My woman just talks straight out too much. So
You already said you hard-headed.
Yeah.
So, hard head makes soft bottom.
But let me say this, just so that I could be clear. Sina Azari, I know I spoke about him earlier. Sina Azari, thank you for your knowledge, time, attention that you gave me, because that tremendously helped. The hardship that we went through together and what you taught me in the hardship has helped me so much in my life. And in the past couple of years, I became a beast because of the knowledge that you gave me. So I would like to thank you. Thank you so much.
Question.
Mm-hmm.
The hard time.
Okay.
And you don't need to explain exactly what it was.
Okay.
But how did you view it? What is hard time? I mean, you don't, like I said, you don't have to explain it.
Mm-hmm.
But what was the hard time, and what did you get out of it?
Not being able to provide in the way that I wanted to provide.
Okay.
Not being in the environment, as in like the living space that I wanted to be in. But those times have taught me to pivot, learn, improvise, and still acquire knowledge, and actually use those knowledges that you're acquiring so that your life could better. Even in a situation where your life is turning chaotic and life is taking more time out of you to even focus on certain things, I focused even harder. And you know me, when shit gets hard, I go into tunnel vision and I focus on finishing one task. And my woman gets scattered, because this is the thing a difference between a man and a woman. I'm not dogging on women. Women have to focus on multiple things. We focus and pin down one thing. So when a lot of things are popping off, I focus down on one thing, execute one thing at a time. And that's what makes a lot of things, I guess, possible to happen. And in the meantime, my woman's focusing on other things where because I'm focused on one thing, she's focused on behind me. She's watching my six constantly. So that's why it works. And that's what cultivated us to become a stronger couple and doing a lot more things in life. So that was a tough moment. But, those were the things.
Well, it's important to recognize that. And I think also based on who's watching, they need to understand that those type of things happen for a reason. It's not necessarily for your detriment. It's for your betterment. And you said something that I want to point out real fast, as far as you said women have to think on multiple things. No, women have the ability to think on multiple things. We don't have that. And I mean, I can give you an example of what I mean. And I say this, I think I've said this in a conversation. I think I, matter of fact, said it to Sonia as well, is you can have a young girl having a tea party. At the table, there are 5 stuffed animals dressed. They all have their own names. They have their own voices spoken by one person. I mean, and the conversation doesn't stop. And the imagination is on point. So for us, as going back to the point of as men think one thing, one way, and I say women are spaghetti, men are waffles. I say that because spaghetti, when you put it together, what does it do? It's overlaying, it's this. Men, waffles, box at a time. So it's like, and what's funny is women don't realize that men have a nothing box that we like to hang out in. What do you think about nothing? I mean, it's just how it is. And so, but to your point, for us as men, and I segue into this conversation because we talk about feelings and we don't know how to deal with our feelings because we are taught one way. So as a child, boys play rough. They crash cars. They play war. Everything's an aggression. There's no sit down and let's have a conversation about how you feel, right? But not realizing that as you grow, you start having feelings. And then the fact that we're not exposed, back to the seen, not heard, is me growing up, you have men that had dealt with these issues, but I never got to see them. Because go sit over there, we're going to do what adults do over here, get out of grown folks' business, and not realizing that the effect that it takes on a child until they're grown, and then the person you need to seek is no longer here, so you can't get wisdom from them, so where do you go? And so, those are the things that are important, and then back even in a relationship is realizing that men think this way and women think this way. And you want to know why relationships don't work is because we come with our own mindsets based on where we're coming from and we're clashing. But the only way you said a key word is communication. You've said that word numerous times in this conversation. Communication is everything. I'm not a great communicator. I'll be exact, but I'm still in a relationship. And so I'm thankful that she's still with me in regards to that. I'm working on my communication, and I wish I would have done it 20 years ago. Life would have been a whole lot easier. But when you're not exposed to having conversations with people who have that kind of conversation. I mean, I don't have anybody in my life except for my aunt whose husband passed, I think, 10 years ago. I didn't have any representation of what a marriage looked like. My mother never married my father. She divorced from my stepfather. My other aunt, she divorced her husband after 20 years. And not taking away from what it is just I didn't have an example. So I didn't know what that looked like. So, and then the relationships that my grandmother did have, I mean, she loved the people she was with, but then it was, early, my grandfather divorced, then the next husband divorced, then the other one, he died. And then, so it's like I had no representation. And then my mindset, or even observing what was going on around me, I didn't understand what I really had in front of me. So I didn't know what I was looking at. I saw them together, but what does that mean to me? Because I'm not in that mindset. I'm not believing what it looks like. I would look back at it now and go, regardless of what relationship she in, she loved that man, period. And obviously he loved her. But, things happen. We don't know what happened. That ain't my business. That's their business. And that's the thing that, we tend to fail to realize even now into today's times is that we're so busy worrying about other people's business that we ain't looking at our own business.
One last question, because we got a lot of stuff to talk about. And we will have a lot more of these conversations. This is just one. But for kids and other men, from your POV, if you're given dating advice, real quick, because we don't have too much time, what's your advice to people?
First of all, be comfortable in who you are and realize that you are the prize. But if you respect yourself enough as the prize, then the person you're talking to, you should be respecting as them being the prize. And so you have to realize that it's a give and take, and you have to play it by, day by day. You can't go into it thinking that you're going to conquer the world. It's like, well, no, this relationship needs to happen. And then you have to also understand that you have baggage, they have baggage, and have to understand that you got to work through the baggage if that's the person you want to be with. Because you can sit here all day long. And like I told my son, I tell my daughter too, it's like, y'all the prize. You have to realize that, what you've been brought up with, your morals, your attitudes towards life and all these things are important because your mother and I poured into you the things, the values of life and the respect of people and all those things, which are extremely important, which we don't necessarily get to see. And that's a whole nother topic because based on their parenting that the people you're dealing with, they didn't have the exposure to that stuff. And so you have to be very careful on, who you're dealing with and realize that you have to understand that people are people and sometimes they can't get with it. And then if that's the case, then you can't be disrespectful. You have to just gracefully take the bow and go, you know what, this is not our time or this ain't gonna work for us. So, but I think, the most important thing is just be comfortable in who you are and don't change for anybody.
For me, I would say it's very simple, very quick. Watch your energy, attention, time, and money. That's it. Watch your energy, who you spend it with. Watch your attention, who you give it to. The most important currency, time. Watch that shit. Watch it. With that being said, we have a lot more coming up. These podcasts are going to be available on audio-only podcast formats as well as audio and visual. So make sure you guys like, comment, and subscribe to the XR Vision Media. We'll put a link in the description. Our Instagram, our personal Instagram handles will be right there as well. There's going to be sponsor blocks, sponsor decks, and then segments as well. We just wanted to establish who we are and what we do and say hi to you guys to start and jumpstart this process. With that being said, it was Tomas from XR Vision Media Podcast.
I'm Mark from XR Media Podcast.
We will be available on YouTube pretty much all the time. We have short and medium and long form content. Make sure, like I said, like, comment, subscribe, go to our Instagram and follow us too so that we could stay connected to you.